Hey guys, this is Science for Faith. It's for 7th and 8th grade, and we're continuing on in chapter 12, going over the forestry chapter, which is also called dendrology, which is the study of shrubs and trees. I'm on page 442. We're going over branching out. If you're wondering where we're going, we're going over to page 445 or so as we get through there. You all picked up your stuff yesterday, and when you picked up your stuff on May 4th, you got a quiz for 12.1, a quiz for 12.2, as well as a quiz for 12.4, meaning that next week you're going to have one more sheet, activity sheet to do, as well as get the test for chapter 12. And then that will take you pretty much through next week. I might post just a couple of things just going over ecology, which is chapter 13, just for your own knowledge and for your own learning, but I don't think you'll have enough time in chapter 13 to have another quiz. Sorry. Yeah, that's awful. So let's look at 442. So on page 442, we're going over branches. So far, we started with the roots. We went up to the trunk. We went up through the bark. We went through the vascular system, the stump. We did all that type of thing. So looking at branching out, besides the stem of a tree, or besides the trunk, the stem of a tree includes branches, which are considered smaller divisions. The largest branches are called limbs or boughs. If you remember that lullaby, When the Bough Breaks, yeah, they're talking about the limb the cradle's on. Who would put a baby on a cradle in a tree? I don't know. So the largest branches are called limbs or boughs, and the smallest branches are called twigs. I don't think anybody's going to fuss at you if you call them something else. So studying a twig is a good way to learn about branches. At the end of a twig and on the other sides of the twigs are some small buds, especially not every tree has branched out at this point. A lot of them have, but especially walnuts. I have a lot of walnut trees at my house, and we always say it's the last tree to bud out or to actually get leaves on it. First tree to lose its leaves. A walnut tree, their leaves start blowing off in late July and August. It's just weird. So the buds allow the stem to grow in length, and it produces new branches, flowers, and leaves. So we have all watched that in sometimes late February, definitely early March, you can watch little trees start to get little buds on them, and they're swelling and growing, and that eventually unfurls into leaves, and those can grow out from that point into a little branch or another little twig. Stem buds are named for their location on the stem, and the terminal bud is found at the end of a twig. It allows that stem to grow out into length. Bud scales cover the terminal buds during dormancy to protect the delicate, underdeveloped tree bark tree part from winter weather, and in the spring, the protective bud scales will fall off, leaving the ring-shaped bud scale scar. Since bud scales fall off only once a year, you can count the number of bud scale scars to determine a branch's age. Not the age of the tree, you need the trunk for that, but for a branch's age, you can tell that. Trees grow in length only from their terminal area. And if you measure the lowest branch on a tree to be 80 inches above the ground and return in 10 years to measure it, then you would expect that same branch to still be about 80 inches above the ground, but to grow out further from the actual trunk. So the growth in length is called primary growth. So the trunk would have to grow, the branch would still be in the same area, basically, but it may grow out longer from that way. I will say, if you look at these little bud scales, we have had freezes before that would come, like everything's trying to unfurl and it'll try to bud, and a freeze can come through, and that would, kill off apples or oranges or fruit trees. But what I can remember is my hydrangea bush one time was coming out really good, and it got bit back by a really hard frost. And when I don't mean like just as we've had frost before, like my grapevine got kind of bit not too long ago, where it would just kind of brown the leaves. It killed it. Like, it dropped in the teens, and it was like that for a few successive nights. So I just remember that year, lots of trees did not survive. My hydrangea, I thought it was dead, but it actually came back the next year. So technically a freeze, a late freeze, or successive periods of freezing weather can bat back or make a tree not even try to produce for an entire year. So looking at the lateral buds, they're on the sides of the twig, and that allows a stem to produce new branches. They're responsible for the area that the crown covers. The terminal bud produces hormones that control the growth of the lateral buds, so only some of those lateral buds will grow. On a branch, you will find many other markings. The place on the stem that leaves grow out of is called a node, and the spaces in between the nodes are called internodes, and then we have small little spores that are called lenticels that allow the air to enter the stem, and it provides for respiration. And I think you have a sheet where you have to fill all this stuff out, so you can get more of an idea for that. Now, one thing that, and I think they gave you, they did not, I'm going to try to bring it up, that I'll try to show you here, is looking at the leaves. Because you look at a tree, and you think, well, a leaf is a leaf, but in actuality, there are different leaves on the same tree. And I'm trying to find images of those, and I'll try to show it up here in just a minute. Oh, good grief, in the morning. I'm getting like plants. I'm not getting like, this is one of those places where it's like, I would really, really like to have, maybe I could do a maple. So let's look at it. So leaves vary by location on the plant and by the habitat that they have of the plant. I think a maple tree has the best ones. I'm looking at images, not shopping. Why am I? Oh, there we go. Nope, that's a Japanese maple. Okay. Just not happening for me here. So I'll just try to look here. So leaves vary by location. God designed tree leaves to grow in arrangements that would maximize its exposure to sunlight and to use the sunlight to its fullest extent. So the surface of the leaf may be covered in chemicals, little hairs, oddly shaped depressions to protect or to hydrate that leaf. The cuticle is a waxy protective layer on the leaf that encourages water retention. Let me see if I can bring that one up a little bit. Yeah. In a dry environment, the leaves are designed to conserve water and prevent heat damage. Tree leaves in a dry environment may have many small hairs that will trap humidity, reflect sunlight, it prevents water loss. These leaves are usually thicker to store more water, and they have a thick cuticle. Sometimes the wax is so thick it plugs the pores on the leaf and it prevents any water from escaping. In a humid environment, the leaves are less careful about retaining moisture. Leaves tend to be thinner and have a thin cuticle, which is where we're at. And you can imagine if you ever look at a succulent, something like my aloe vera that I have here, and how thick those leaves are, that's a leaf that has to conserve water and has a drier environment. Now compare that, just run out into your yard and look at a leaf that's on one of these trees that grows wild. They're thin, they have a thinner cuticle. Why are they like that? They don't have to worry about conserving water. We're practically drowning in water right now. We've had so much rain and our soil is so saturated. So some species will produce a resin that will actually pull the water out of the leaf, causing the root to absorb new water and to fill it with dissolved minerals and nutrients. Now on each tree, the leaves may be different, fully depending on their location on the tree, and that's what I was trying to bring out. Trees of many varieties grow two different types of leaves, and those two varieties would be either a shade leaf, and I have an oak tree here. Hold on here. I have an oak. Well, maybe. I did not realize it was a PowerPoint doodad. Okay, let me try to get it a little bit further. But anyway, If we look at this one, come on. Yeah, it is not wanting me to do. This is an oak leaf. And as you can see, if we look at this oak leaf, the first one that you've got, just bring it up. Have you ever had one of those days where you're just like, really? Really? The very first one is a shade leaf. So this bigger leaf is a shade leaf because that's what it requires. So shade leaves are at the bottom of the tree. They tend to be larger in surface area and thinner. They also tend to have more chlorophyll, which allows them to undergo photosynthesis with just a drop of sunlight. They can start going through photosynthesis. Sun leaves are found at the top of the tree, and they tend to be thicker and smaller. Since sunlight is readily available, they don't have to compete with other leaves. They don't have to have a lot of surface area. The ratio of sun leaves to a shade tree fully depends on where it's living at. So whether it's in the forest or in the woods, or whether it's in a yard with no competing trees. Since seedlings may be found maybe all shade leaves until they grow taller in the surrounding vegetation. Many species like dogwoods, maples, oaks, birches, beeches, they all produce both these sun leaves and these shade leaves. So you running out under a tree, grabbing a leaf, more than likely you're going to grab a shade leaf. These are going to be at the top of the tree. You're not probably, unless the tree falls down, which is happening regularly with these storms, that's when you can grab a sun leaf. So that's something maybe you can go out and kind of look at trees for, because I'm sure y'all are really excited about that. So let's look at winter preparation. A feature unique to deciduous trees is their ability to lose their leaves in preparation for winter. As cooler, shorter days approach the trees prepare for the unfavorable season by beginning to shut down their activity and starting to rest. And that's primarily accomplished through their leaves. So like we talked about, these leaves are green, or look green, primarily because it takes chlorophyll for photosynthesis. I'm looking out my window, like you all could look out my window. You can even see it because it's so blurry at the light. But that's what that's why I'm looking this way. You could look out your window at trees. So right now, most of our trees are green because they primarily have a pigment of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll in the fall will begin to deteriorate. Since there's no new chlorophyll being made to replace those pigments, then some of the other pigments start to show through. So we have xanthophyll, it produces yellows, keratin, which produces oranges, anthocyanin, which produces purples, reds, and blues. And these pigments are present year-round in lots of plants, and it causes the colors in fruits and flowers and roots, and they're there present in those leaves too, but you just don't see them until the chlorophyll starts to die down in the fall. I went to school at UT Knoxville, and of course that's the big orange school, and their Stadium Drive and most of their trees that are along the roads are sugar maples. Do you know why they got sugar maples? Because when the chlorophyll starts to go down, keratin is the main pigment that's going to show through, which is a bright orange. I wonder why they did that. Don't know. Okay, so these pigments are present year-round, and most conifers, which are trees that are gymnosperms, do not shed their leaves in winter. The leaves, therefore, or their needles are covered in a thick wax and resin for protection. So even trees like magnolias and some of these other trees that look, okay, it's not like a needle. If you look at one of their leaves, they keep their leaves all year round. Those leaves are really thick. If you look at a boxwood or some type of evergreen shrub and you look at their leaves, they're really thick. They're almost waxy, and that's what protects the leaf. So the leaves begin to change, the seasons change, the leaf sends its leftover nutrients and its sugars back into the stem, And once it does that, it forms what's called an abscission layer. And if you look up the word abscission, it just means cut off. That abscission layer forms at the base to sever that leaf from the branch, and that's what makes the leaves fall down. I remember seeing this weird meme that said, Americans, we call it fall because the leaves fall down. Europeans, we call it autumn because of the autumnal equinox that happens normally on September 20th or 21st. Okay. So all that remains on the tree is a leaf scar from that. Any remaining sugar or nutrients that were left in the leaf will be recycled and returned to the soil for the next year. So now as you go, we're looking at trees in the desert. And these become really popular, especially, I really like them. I normally try to I have a succulent that's in my classroom, which is my aloe vera, because you don't have to water it all the time. And I need to take those things home. You don't have to water them all the time. And aloe veras, you can use them for burns. And then they're supposed to clean the air really well, too. And you get a bunch of crowded kids in here, you need to clean the air. So if we went to the desert, of course, there's not, plants most of the time don't just scream at you, but God has provided some flora for the fauna, some flora for the fauna, which are the animals, that make their home there. The scattered trees of the desert are called cacti, and they can be from like that to up, to huge. Like a saguaro cactus is massive. So cacti are perennial flowering plants that live well in dry regions. They're native to North and South America, the West Indies. They grow like a ground cover, shrubs, or they can be a tree. They're often used as ornamental plants. Some, like the prickly pear, can also be considered a crop plant. Cacti range in size from small and globular to tall and columnar. The smallest is the Blossophilidia lilliputana, which is basically about half inch in diameter, and that's when it's fully grown. The tallest is from Mexico, and it's the cardon. And with it is that cardon cactus got up to 63 feet. So cacti have enlarged stems that contain chlorophyll and carry on photosynthesis for the plant. They can be herbaceous or woody, dependent on the species size. The internal structure of a woody cacti is kind of like that of another tree. There's a cambium layer between the woody inner tissue and the outside of the stem. And if we look at these cacti that we have here, the majority of a cactus stem would consist of a thin wall storage cell that can be spongy or hollow. And when it rains, then that spongy stem would store all the water through the roots and soak it up. Cactus roots are really thin and fibrous and shallow, and they're designed that way so they can very quickly suck up any precipitation that reaches the desert ground before it has a chance to evaporate or run off. So within 2 hours of a rain, new roots grow in response to that moisture. There's lots of nature shows that will show the flowers of the desert and how if they can just get a little spit of moisture, they just very quickly grab that moisture, flower, reproduce seeds, and it can all be done within just a very short amount of time because the desert just does not get a lot of water. So those plants really have to adapt to their environment. So within 2 hours of rain, new roots can grow in response to the moisture. And because little precipitation falls, the cactus can absorb the moisture through its body as well. This is useful because early morning fogs might be the only water or precipitation that these desert cacti would get. A thick waxy coating on the cactus also aids in water retention. Very few species of cacti have true leaves. Instead, the leaves are on a cactus are specially designed spines for which most cacti are known for. Spines defend against water-seeking animals. In some species of cactus, the leaves are large. Cactus leaves that are not spines behave and look like leaves of other plants containing stomata, xylem, and phloem. One of the best known cactus trees is the saguaro. It can reach up to 52 feet high, about 2.5 diameter, 2.5 feet diameter. They are found only in the Sonoran Desert of Arizona, California, and Mexico. They actually have problems in those areas of people stealing saguaros because they're really difficult. They're difficult to move. You have to have permits, I think, to move them. And because of that, people want them in their desert scape there in California and some of those other places. So if we look at saguaros, they're also slow growing. A typical saguaro may grow only about 1.5 inches in the first 10 years of its life. These tiny cactus seedlings are hard to find since they grow under the protection of a nurse plant. And as a saguaro grows, the nurse plant usually dies from the competition. The saguaro begins to produce white flowers when it's about 35 years in age, but it doesn't get branches until 50 to 70 years of age. Saguaros are not considered adults until they're at least 125 years old. And because of all the water they can hold, saguaros can weigh up to 2.5 tons almost. So they're really difficult to deal with and move. But it's really a saguaro plant. If you can imagine one that's got branches, it's almost 125 years old. And that's why, people move them. People even steal them from national forests, national parks, things like that. But man, they're really difficult to move. So that's your lesson for today. We did not pray at the beginning of the lesson, so we'll pray to end this lesson. So let's go to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, we just want to praise you and thank you for the many things you've given us in your creation that we have to study about. Father, be with us and be with our world. We pray for the wisdom of heaven to come down and to reach us and to all of those who are in authority over us. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. So have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you later.